KPBS On Demand is supported by Splatero, helping homeowners pay off debt or for home improvements by offering streamlined access to your home's equity with no additional monthly payments or new debt. Splatero provides a lump sum payment in exchange for a share of your home's future value. Learn more at splatero.com.
Welcome back to another edition of the KPBS Cinema Junkie podcast. I'm Beth Accomando. The new film, Hell or High Water, looks to a pair of Texas brothers on a crime spree, but it's about a lot more than bank robbers on the run. Hell or High Water is something rare. It's a film for adults, and by that, I mean it's smart, it has something to say, and it doesn't condescend to the audience. This starts with the script by Taylor Sheridan, who also wrote the excellent Sicario. His script delivers both a crime drama and a social commentary.
You may be hearing a lot of things about me and your uncle.
Whatever I hear, I won't believe.
No, you believe it. I did all of it.
Those banks loaned the least they could so they could swipe your mama's land.
It's a big bank. It's too big. That's what she said.
They took everything from your family. This is your chance to take you back.
On the ground!
Paying them back with their own money?
Well, if that ain't Texan, I don't know what is.
You hear about these bank robberies? I may have one hunt left in me.
It's a good thing you're done.
We're doing it.
Every step of the way.
They know exactly what they're doing. They're trying to raise a certain amount, that's my guess. I think I got these boys figured.
He's got no record. He's never been arrested. You don't fit the bill, Marcus.
You want to get us killed? That's not part of the plan!
Gotta be smart. We're ways from being finished.
We're gonna need SWAT up here. Get back! These boys, they aren't done yet.
Tanner, played by Ben Foster, and Toby, played by Chris Pine, are Texas brothers that set off on a crime spree robbing banks. They're stealing too little money to generate FBI interest, but more than enough to catch the eye of an about-to-retire Texas Ranger named Marcus Hamilton. Hamilton's played by Jeff Bridges, who borrows a few notes from Tommy Lee Jones's character in No Country for Old Men. Hamilton and his partner Alberto Parker, played by Gil Birmingham, set out to investigate the robberies. And along the way, they discover that while the brothers are committing the overt crime, the real villains may be the banks themselves. Here's what Parker, who's part Mexican and part Native American, has to say in the film.
All this was my ancestors' land. These folks took it, and now it's been taken from them. Except it ain't no army doing it. It's those sons of bitches right there.
Director David Mackenzie fell in love with Sheridan's script, and he directs the film. For this podcast, I'll be speaking with both Mackenzie and actor Gil Birmingham. In the interview, Mackenzie talks about how the film looks to the open wounds of America right now. Hell or High Water suggests a change may be brewing. Some, like the brothers in the film, may be willing to fight back, even if it means breaking the law and paying a price. But I saw one review that damned the film as leftist propaganda. That's a little too simplistic of an interpretation. Sure, there's a liberal slant to the view that banks are evil, but that's nothing new, and it's not limited to just those on the left. And these gun-toting brothers who are willing to kill to secure the financial future of Toby's kids don't exactly come across as Bernie Sanders supporters. In fact, their reaction to their economic situation could even be seen as reflecting something of what Trump supporters seem to be feeling fed up with. So rather than being left or right-winged, the film just seems to be capturing a snapshot of the general state of anxiety and unease in our country today. It does use genre trappings to reflect some social realities, much in the same way as the 60s and 70s films like Easy Rider or Last Picture Show did. It's refreshing to see a film where characters throughout the movie are well-developed, where good and bad is not black and white, and where social realities are not sidestepped to make for a more palatable commercial product. Hell or High Water is a throwback to the gritty indie films of the 70s. It leaves you with plenty to think about and to savor after the credits roll, and there's a lot to appreciate. So here's my interview with director David Mackenzie and actor Gil Birmingham. They came to San Diego to host a screening of the film and a Q&A. First of all, how did this project come to you? Because you are not a native Texan, and this is set in Texas. So how did you come upon this project?
It was a script that was given to me, and I read it very quickly and had a very sort of immediate reaction to it. I knew nothing of where it came from or whatever. My agent just gave it to me, and I instantly fell in love with it. It had a very strong sense of place. It had a very strong shape of narrative that went from robberies into something that felt like it was really quite profound about the state of the West and of America itself. Into some action elements, and it seemed like a really good balance of all sorts of things. It to me, I'm a big fan of 1970s American cinema. And it had an element of that to it, but it also felt very contemporary. It felt like it was about things that are really kind of alive in America right now, and it really excited me. I had spent a little bit of time in West Texas before, and I really was impressed by the kind of landscape and personality of the place. So when this script came along, it was like, okay, I can channel that into this, and it felt like a really perfect match.
Well, your film is one that's probably hard to promote because it doesn't fit neatly into one particular little box. So what kind of influence did you have in terms of kind of the different genres that were playing into this?
The influences, as I mentioned, the American cinema of the 70s in particular were my influence. I've made 9 films, and I've always sort of tried to kind of mess with the genre in one way or another. I mean, this film is a bank robbery movie, it's a Western, it's a buddy movie, it's a road movie, and it is a kind of snapshot of America now. And so it's a kind of juggle of those things. But I think people are regarding it as overall as a Western. And the themes of the Western, the themes of that landscape and sort of outlaws in that landscape feel like they're a resonant part of it.
Well, you have Jeff Bridges in it, and you mentioned 70s films. So was Last Picture Show anything on the landscape?
The first robbery takes place in Archer City, which is where Last Picture Show was set. We didn't actually shoot it there, we shot it in New Mexico, but the first thing I did was go to Archer City, and it hasn't really changed in the 45 years since that film was made. It's incredible. The picture house is still, it was burnt down, but the shell of it's there. And it was a shame that we couldn't get Jeff to return to his roots there. But in spirit, he did by, Jeff and Gil's characters investigating that first robbery and turning up in what's nominally Archer City in the film. Talking of Jeff's early work, Fat City and Thunderbolt and Lightfoot were definite references to me. Thunderbolt and Lightfoot is sort of two kind of outlaws on the run in the Midwest, and it's got a real lovely tone to it. So it was kind of fun to be able to work with Jeff and to tap into some of those early films that he did.
And Gil, you are from Texas, so how did you feel he captured that environment?
Well, I was born in Texas, but I was a product of a military family, so we left when I was about 2 years old. I still have family there, but even beyond that, my father was in law enforcement for 30 years, so I had that to draw upon. And we had a great technical advisor, Joaquin Jackson, who's an iconic Texas Ranger, had written a couple of books about his experiences, and he was there on the set with us, so there were some wonderful things to draw on.
And you got to work with Jeff Bridges because you guys are partners in the film. And how did that rapport work out? Because you said there was something behind the scenes that kind of helped you guys fall into a nice groove.
Well, Jeff is the dude. He's the man, I'll tell you. He's iconic in the acting world, and for a good reason. Our first connection was really through music. We had both been playing music since we were young boys, and so we brought that in as our kind of creative expressing together, which just crossed over into the acting and really opened up the world for both of us to feel very at ease from a very early part of the show.
It was a joy to experience the guys playing and how that playing, how that learning to kind of read each other and improvise with each other musically kind of fed into a lot of what they were doing acting wise. And there are certain parts of the film where it was literally kind of improvised like that, and watching that kind of musical banter is a fantastic kind of experience for me. And I really love the dynamic between Gil and Jeff and how you start with a very antagonistic, quite politically incorrect relationship, and then you go underneath it and you start realizing that there's deeper and deeper affection and ultimately kind of love for each other. It's a sort of odd couple relationship in a really interesting way, and I think that the guys did an amazing job with it.
All right, you're the one who brought up this notion of politically incorrect, and there's some interesting elements to the relationship between these two Texas Rangers, because Jeff Bridges' character kind of prods you a little bit with racial jokes. How did you guys want that to play out? Because we are in a time when there are a lot of people who are very sensitive to these kind of things. So how did you want that to kind of play into the film, and how did you get it to work?
I can answer that. I mean, it was in the script, and I think it's a reflection of some of the characters in that world, as well as a reflection of a journey that the characters go on. And I felt it was very important not to flinch from it. And I'm sensitive. I'm politically correct myself, probably most of the time. But I think that the film needed to go down that line, and I think it is one needs to be sensitive to all issues, but also one can't shy away from them. And so I think that we were very, very awkward and sensitive in dealing with it, but we agreed that we would aim at the target, and we did. And I think that the way that Jeff and Gil approached it was really sensitive and really interesting how it sort of evolved. But what do you think, Gil?
Yeah, at first when I had read it, those are the things that kind of were red flags for me. And I go, well, how do you make this work? And how do you retort to these things that don't become this antagonistic relationship between these two characters that really care and they've got each other's back? But then as you watch the movie and you come to realize that Jeff is in a place in his life where he's lost his wife, 2 years prior, and he's being forced to resign from a job that he's identified as himself with for his whole life. And this is the best for that generation that he came from, to be able to express that. But it happens in real life as well in families. We will find triggers with our siblings, and you'll push those little buttons. And I made an interesting observation. I guess, I don't know, you probably saw the film so many times when you were editing, but there's a reference Jeff makes to my character, as an Indian and being fond of the bottle, And if you watch the movie, my character is the only one that doesn't drink. So I think, the behaviors are speak for themselves, but the dialogue provided an opportunity for them kind of to express their affection in a kind of twisted way.
And it kind of teaches you to prod back as well.
Maybe one of these bank robbers is going to want a gunfight, and I can dodge my retirement in a blaze of glory.
Well, I've seen you shoot. Won't be much glory in it.
Yeah, I had some good zingers there, but for time constraints, they kind of got edited out. But
that's not true, Gil. You got
you're
the one. You started all by saying I've seen you shoot.
Well, that's true.
So yeah.
But the one that was missing is when I make reference to his ancestry wearing skirts.
Yes, I know. Well, that's because I'm Scottish. I wasn't very keen on that.
Personal...
idea,
oh, now we're getting to the root.
One of the nice elements that you wove in is this consciousness of kind of the social and economic conditions that all these characters are living in. And there's signage constantly when they're driving down the road that you see about debt relief or about jobs. How important was that to you to get it in, and how did you want to do it so that it didn't kind of hit people over the head?
It's interesting because that is the backdrop of the story. That's part of the reason why the brothers take their desperate plan and into action. It was always about putting those things into an organic context. So they're happening while other things are happening, and about a balance. Actually, there was at one point a bit more, and we thought, okay, we're really hitting this on the head a little bit. So it's as with all elements in a way of making a film from a director's point of view, it's all about the balance of things and just getting things working right. But yeah, the all of those signs were signs that we kind of saw on the road. They're a reflection of a reality out there. Obviously, we had to kind of engineer them so that they weren't about individual banks or whatever. But we were trying to show a reality that we saw in our travels in both Texas and New Mexico.
Gil, you had a really interesting piece of dialogue where you're talking about how the land was stolen initially by armies and now it's these corporations. So how does that play into that?
I think that's just part of the brilliant writing that Sheridan incorporated of his own observation. He was from Texas himself, and a lot of his personal experiences were reflected in the film. But it addresses the idea this perpetual cycle that's always kind of gone on through history. First the land being taken from the natives, and now, by force of weaponry, and now it's being done by corporations and banks. And I think that's what people will probably relate to as they see these things, this kind of, as they impact them, presently, and the economic conditions that they're experiencing now.
That speech is, in a way, it's sort of the heart of the film, and I think, the idea that of the Comanche, or the land of the Comanche, which is that kind of part of Texas into New Mexico, being kind of reclaimed in a very different way, it is one of the kind of big kind of thematic echoes of the film, and Gil's kind of speech in there, it sort of really sums things up.
Well, and it's interesting, too, because you depict this kind of gun culture that's in Texas as well. I mean, everybody's got a gun. The robbers do, as well as the people that they're robbing. You talk about the fact that, initially this land is stolen through that kind of violence. But now you're at this cross point where you've got your characters trying to rob the banks that are robbing them in a very different way. And it's a very interesting kind of intersection of all that.
That's what, in a way, feels like is why the film is topical now, and why it has some resonance, and also, why the subject is attractive to us to enter in and try and express.
I've been poor my whole life. It's like a disease, passing from generation to generation. But not my boys. Not anymore.
Good morning, folks! Open the drawers!
Y'all gonna steal my gun too?
We ain't stealing from you, we're stealing from the bank.
I'm interested in why you chose Nick Cave to compose, because he worked on a brilliant Western, The Proposition, and I don't know, did that have any influence on why you chose him?
Nick Cave and Warren Ellis, to be fair. They're equal partners. We're, my editor and myself are fans of their work, and we had quite a lot of country music in the film that needed a foil, and we just, something I really like about what Nick and Warren do, that music that feels very epic but doesn't feel grandiose, and they kind of get that balance right, and some atonal stuff that they put in, and so we really wanted them to do it. We were actually using a lot of music, including music from The Proposition, as temp score, and then we gave it to them a little bit embarrassed, saying, well, we've already put some of your music in there, and they responded and did a brilliant job, and they're lovely gentlemen as well. I really, really enjoyed working with them.
Incredibly talented. You guys were here in San Diego last night for a screening where you did a Q&A, and one of the things that came up that I was really interested in is this notion that you said you didn't have a script supervisor on the set. And explain why that you went that route.
There are certain things that I do as a director to try and maximize the amount of freedom that we have on set. I don't have clapperboards, I don't have a script supervisor, I don't have monitors or video village, and the idea of that is you have a more flexible environment on the set. You don't have people crowded around looking at monitors. You don't have all this sort of bank of people sort of supervising what's going on, and it means that as a director you have a direct relationship with your creative team, and you minimize the amount of kind of baggage. And this is how I like to make films, and I've done it several times, and I translating that, which I've done on a British context to an American context, was quite hard to persuade people. But I think people began to realise that it worked. And I have a feeling that the actors, and I'd love to ask Gil about it, really enjoyed the comparative, lack of barriers between what they were doing and what we were doing. But what did you think, Gil?
Oh, I loved it. I mean, I think the next project I did after that was so stark to me, because all of a sudden somebody's jumping in the middle of the scene and correcting me with the dialogue, and I go, "Where'd you come from? Get out of here!" But and the continuity, I think, for the relationships between the characters was so much more accessible. You're not getting breaks. I love the story that the makeup people, they told me that you had talked to them, and they said, "Listen, once we start filming, just stay out of the picture. Don't even come near." And they're always so concerned, so they said they got their binoculars and they're watching from afar and see if anything, absolutely has to be taken care of. But it provided such a wonderful, freedom, like David spoke about, and the continuity of the emotional interactions and dynamics with the characters.
A lot of people were asking. It means that the cast and everyone else asked me the questions, and I therefore I know what the answers are, rather than people trying to second guess. But also, we had quite a tight shoot. It was only a 7-week shoot. So without all these things getting in the way, you can get more done in a day, which is another kind of sort of bonus thing, I guess.
You had also mentioned that the script supervisor was sometimes the person that people went to for information rather than you. And that's one of the reasons why you didn't want to have one.
I mean, in the past, that's what I noticed about script supervisors is that people don't want to bother the director, so they start, having conversations, sidebar conversations about things, and you suddenly find there's a Chinese whispers, and things spiral off into a completely new direction, and then and it's not the right use of time. I have to be very fair that there was a script supervisor that the studio sort of pushed on us, but I was able to get him in the edit, and the poor chap had to work late hours trying to cycle through our footage. So Jean-Paul, much appreciate your effort there. It was, anyways. I mean, it's not a big deal, but it's great for me to have not had that barrier between myself and what I was doing.
And you mentioned editing. Talk about your editor and about the pacing of this film, because when you mention or when you promote a film as kind of a crime movie, we've been trained to expect this kind of fast pace and rapid cutting, and this has this wonderful sense of kind of letting things develop in this very kind of natural way.
Thank you. Well, my editor Jake Roberts is an extremely talented guy. I've worked with him on 5 films, and we have a great rapport. And I think he's a great editor, and his instincts are great. But the film always demanded to have different shades and different pacings, just because of what it was. Because it started off with kind of action sequences, and then started to become more sort of about deeper things in the middle. And you needed to let that space go. And when we were shooting, we really needed to. Well, in that empty environment, you want to let the silences do as much work as the dialogue, and let things pause out. So it's a real balancing job to try and get enough action and then enough contemplation and enough texture and all those things, and to get that shape so the audience aren't kind of getting impatient with it, and enough clarity so the audience know what's going on, and that's kind of what the editorial process is about. And I mean, Jake's an excellent editor.
Oh, these boys, they aren't done yet, I'll tell you that.
How come?
Well, they're patient. They just sticking to the drawers, not taking the hundreds. That's the bank's money. We can trace that. They're trying to raise a certain amount, that's my guess. It's going to take a few banks to get there.
Part of the pacing also comes from the script. Can both of you talk a little bit about working with Taylor Sheridan's script, and Gil particularly the dialogue that he writes?
Well, I became a big fan of Taylor's writing from Sicario, which was just outstanding. And then to read this and just how concise, with not that much dialogue, but conveying so much, and then it leaves the rest of it to the director and the actors. I worked on another project, his third, subsequent to this, project called Wind River, and
which Taylor directed, by the way.
Yeah, it was his directorial debut, but he's just an astounding and brilliant writer, and he just has the gift. He's gifted.
It's interesting you say there's not very much dialogue, because I think there's quite a lot of dialogue in this film.
Well, but it's concise dialogue. There's not really a lot of fat to any of it.
Yeah, I would say it's lean.
Yes.
And effective. Do either of you have closing comments about the film? Anything you want to kind of say to people before they see it?
One of the things that's really important to me is that the film sort of has your thriller kind of bank robbery, those kind of elements to it, and the kind of so cops and robbers elements to it. But also, I mean, the two things it is also is a serious snapshot of some of the open wounds of America right now. It's not judgmental, but it's kind of you can see them. But also there are some quite light moments in there. There's some good entertaining comedy too. And I think it's important that if you're going to see it, you have a feeling that there's both shades of light and dark in there.
Your waitresses provided quite a bit of comedy, both of them.
Yeah, they're great characters. The waitresses, you have a road movie element, so you're passing these characters, but these waitresses in the film are both really strong women who really kind of hit the screen in a fantastic way. And Katie Mixon and Margaret Bowman, who played them, did a fantastic job.
Now, let's see what they got to eat here. Howdy, ma'am. How you doing today?
Hot, and I don't mean the good kind. So what don't you want?
Pardon?
What don't you want?
Oh, well, I think I'll just,
You know, I've been working here for 44 years. Ain't nobody ever ordered nothing but T-bone steak and a baked potato. Except this one told from New York tried to order trout back in 1987. We don't sell no trout. T-bone steaks. So either you don't want the corn on the cob, or you don't want the green beans. So what don't you want?
I'm really proud of what they did, and I have to say, all the other supporting cast, as well as the four leads, the supporting cast really make the flavour of this film. They're every one of them has got a great attitude, great face, great performances, and they express the world of the film really well.
Well, you mentioned 70s film, so again, that brings up the Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore, the Martin Scorsese one, which had strong waitresses.
Yeah.
Gil, any closing comments?
I would say that people, it may sound like a genre that's been done down the road, it's a Western, but it's a combination of a contemporary and a classical mixture, like a neo-Western. But the different twist and the humanity, I think, that's expressed with the characters through the writing, as much as the events that you would not expect to happen. Some of these things are set up through the film that have, major payoffs at the end of it as well. I don't think that anybody would guess what would happen.
All right, I want to thank both of you very much, especially for coming all the way to San Diego.
Thank you very much for having us.
Yes.
And for that thing last night as well.
All right. Thanks for listening to another edition of the KPBS Cinema Junkie podcast. Hell or High Water is currently playing in cinemas, and I urge you to go see it. Coming up on Cinema Junkie will be an interview with Steve Martin talking about the world premiere of Meteor Shower at the Old Globe Theater. I'll also be previewing the Horrible Imaginings Film Festival with its founder, Miguel Rodriguez. The festival runs September 7th through the 11th here in San Diego at the Museum of Photographic Arts. Please subscribe to the Cinema Junkie podcast on iTunes or check out the archives at kpbs.org/junkiepodcast. So till our next film fix, I'm Beth Accomando, your resident Cinema Junkie.
KPBS On Demand is supported by Splatero, helping homeowners pay off debt by offering streamlined access to your home's equity with no additional monthly payments or new debt. Splatero provides a lump sum payment in exchange for a share of your home's future value. Pre-qualification is available at splatero.com.